Butterflies return someday. Here we go. Let's load it up. In the middle of a busy neighborhood stood Carver School with a red brick front, a chain link fence, a faded basketball court, and a playground where children gathered before the first bell. Right above the main doors hung a little brass bell. Now, by now, most schools had buzzers, but Carver still had that bell. Come in, children, start your day. Bring your books, bring your minds. Let's get in here and learn some new things. The neighborhood loved that little bell. They loved their bell. They loved how steady she was. They loved how sweet she sounded. They loved that no matter what happened outside those doors, she kept ringing. Now, if somebody's little brother ran across the playground with one shoe untied, the bell rang. If the wind blew worksheets across the sidewalk, the bell rang. If boys chased each other across the basketball court and splashed dirty water on the girls' shoes, the bell rang. If the adults started fussing by the front gate before work, the bell rang. She is such a good little bell, people would say. But here's the thing. The little bell did not think of herself as the keeper of everybody's peace. That's their thing. She thought of herself like this. I'm a bell. Her work was to ring when it was time, not to stop children from acting wild, not to settle grown people's arguments, not to teach boys, not to bother girls, not to make adults do what adults were supposed to do. Hey, but little by little, Carver School began asking more of her. One morning, a boy named Brindle kept kicking mulch from under the playground slide into the other children's faces. The teacher sighed and looked up at the bell. Look, ring a little softer for me. Maybe your sweet sound will calm him down. So the little bell did. The little bell rang softer. Brindle still kept kicking mulch. The girls coughed and wiped their eyes. The teacher smiled and said, that bell is so patient. The next day, Brindle snatched Mina's tablet and ran across the basketball court laughing. Now Mina shouted, of course, "Give it back!" And the teacher frowned. Mina, do not make all that noise. We are trying to have a peaceful morning. Little bell, ring louder. Help us get things back in order. So the little bell rang louder. Brindle laughed louder. Mina sat on the bench without her tablet. Some of the adults nodded. That bell is such a gift. She makes everything feel better. But everything was not better. It just sounded better. And soon, the school that was working on the low budget that was given to them found more uses for the bell. When the bigger boys pushed the smaller children away from the water fountain, the bell was told to ring kindly, please. And when grown men again argued in the parking lot over last night's ball game, the bell was told, ring gently. When the school board passed a new rule that made the girls share their private space before it ever asked the girls anything about how they felt, not even their parents, the bell was told to ring beautifully. So Listen, so nobody would feel troubled. Ring for tolerance, they said. Ring for peace. Ring for progress. Ring so nobody feels excluded. Ring so nobody feels ashamed. Ring so the school looks good. You gotta ring. And the little bell rang. She rang until her brass grew dull. She rang until her rope frayed. She rang until the sound that once came from joy began to come from strain. And you know what? Still everybody praised her. What a mature little bell. What a patient little bell. What a useful little bell. What would we do without her? And then, one afternoon, a storm rolled over the neighborhood. The sky all of a sudden decided it was going to be gray. The wind bent the trees behind the school, and the children rushed toward the front doors. But Brindle and some of the rough boys blocked the entrance, shoving and laughing. "Move," Mina said. Brindle grinned. "Me." The teacher looked up at the bell. "Ring," she said. The bell was silent. The teacher blinked. "Little bell, ring. Do you see these children upset? Come on now, ring." The bell did not move. The principal came outside. The district people came from the office. A few parents even gathered by the curb. Because, see, what's happening? What is going on with the bell? "Ring for peace," they yelled. The bell stayed still. "Ring for order." Nothing. "Ring for kindness." Mm-mm. "Ring for the good of the school." After a pause, the little bell spoke. And her voice was not a loud voice, but it did travel across that schoolyard like thunder wearing a pair of church shoes. And she said this: "I was made to ring. I was not made to raise your children, soften your rules, excuse your failures, or make danger sound like peace." And now the schoolyard went completely silent. When Brindle kicked mulch, you told me to ring softer. When he stole Mina's tablet, you told me to ring louder. When the boys blocked the doorway, you told me to ring for order. When the girls were uncomfortable, you told me to ring for tolerance. When adults failed to protect children, you told me to ring beautifully enough that nobody would notice. And now I started looking down and around, and people were looking at sidewalks, and you know how we do. The bell said, "More. You have mistaken my music for permission." Well, then little Mina stepped forward. Now her little sneakers were muddy. Her braids were coming loose at the end, but her chin was lifted. And she said this: "She's right. Every time something happens, you ask the bell to make it sound better. You ask us to be quieter, kinder, calmer, sweeter, but you never ask the boys to stop." Brindle looked around, and for the first time, nobody laughed with him. Well, then Miss Odessa, the grandmother who volunteered in the cafeteria and swept the floor steps after dismissal, tapped her broom against the concrete. "Well, a bell cannot do the work of a backbone. A bell cannot do a backbone's work." And then the school did what it should have done long before. They fixed that old raggedy broken gate. They created more spaces, and they asked the girls what they thought, because they think. They wrote rules that protected all of the children who had been expected to endure, every single one of them. They stopped seating the calm girls beside disruptive boys as if Patience was some sort of cushion. They listened when the girl said, "I am uncomfortable." They stopped calling discomfort disrespect. They stopped calling silence peace. They stopped worrying about what things looked like on the outside. And the little bell, for a while, she got to rest. For a little while. No one called her bitter. No one called her divisive. And no one called her unkind. And that happened after Miss Odessa stood beside her with that broom and said, "You know that bell, this little bell right here has been carrying this school long enough." When the bell finally rang again, her sound was different. She had rest. So now she was clearer, freer, more focused. Not strained, not forced, not used. She rang because it was time for class. She rang, and the children walked straight through those beautiful red brick doors. Mina carried her tablet. Brindle carried his book bag. The teacher stood at the doorway. Now she real rested and happy too. She needed rest too. The principal stood near the gate. And from that day on, when trouble rose in the schoolyard, nobody looked first to the bell. And above the front doors of Carver School, they painted these words so that they would remember: "Do not ask the gentle to carry what the responsible refuse to hold." And beneath that, in smaller letters, because the bell made this special request for the girls, it said, "A girl's calm belongs to her." And so the moral of the story is this: peace is not real when one side is allowed to demand and the other side is trained to soothe and soothe and soothe again. Girls are not the engine of everyone else's comfort. Their patience is not public property. Their childhood is not the price of progress. That's the fable of the little bell at Carver School. This is Tanya G.J. Prince. Thanks for listening. Y'all be great.